I knew something was rotten when Rick Salerno called my 24 years of infrastructure work background noise. Not even a month into his new role, and he was already strutting around like he'd pissed excellence into every Ethernet cable in the building. The man couldn't read a kernel panic if it slapped him across the face in Comic Sans, but he sure loved his buzzwords. Flatten the hierarchy, disrupt the legacy, bring vibrant energy into back-end engineering, whatever the hell that means. My name's Margaret Halley, but around here everyone just calls me Hallie. For 2 decades, I made sure this place didn't eat itself alive. Rick never even bothered to ask what I did, just assumed I was a leftover. The moment that really sealed it, he wheeled in a damn passion meter and made us take daily surveys. Gauge your fire, it said in neon font. You know what I did? I rated myself a 3.14 out of 10 and told him it was the number of seconds it took for his enthusiasm to become a security risk. Rick didn't get the joke, just muttered something about attitude problems and walked off, probably to go vape lemon sorbet in the break room. Now listen, if you've made it this far, do me a solid. Tap the like button and subscribe. 97% of people who listen to stories like this never do, and I promise it really helps the team behind these. Keeps the lights on and the stories coming. All right, back to it. See, Rick thought he was hot shit because he knew how to order custom Slack emojis. But I'd been in this game since dial-up. I watched this company go from 6-person startup in a shared WeWork to a $300 million valuation with government contracts riding on our uptime. And I did it all without ever needing a ring light or a TikTok strategy deck. But I had a secret, one I never told Rick. I'd been building something on the side for years. Something real. An adaptive load balancer engine designed for environments with unpredictable bandwidth and live redundancy adjustments. I called it Osprey. Wrote every line myself on my own machines with not one strand of company DNA touching it. I kept it in a private repo, tucked away behind two-factor AUth, versioned, documented, clean. It started as a personal challenge, then it became something more. Rick didn't know that. What he did know, or thought he knew, was that I was the old guard, that I'd be easy to nudge out. So he started with alignment talks, HR sessions, bullshit check-ins where they asked how energized I felt about the new direction. I told them I felt energized enough to survive the next reorg. They didn't laugh. Then came the housekeeping paperwork. Rick passed it out like Halloween candy. Just standard stuff, he said. Little IP alignment, nothing scary. I took mine home, spent the night reading. Page 12, paragraph 17. Any invention, tool, or design conceived during employment, regardless of hours, equipment, or location, was property of the company. It was a goddamn land grab. They were trying to own Osprey. I didn't sign. I printed the clause, highlighted it, and wrote a sticky note. My original terms stand. Sent it to HR and made a copy for my lawyer. And that should have been the end of it, but Rick couldn't help himself. At the Friday town hall, standing under a projector and grinning like he'd just discovered fire, he demoed a new architecture initiative the team was collaborating on. He called it Project Helix. And when he pulled up the interface, my stomach turned to concrete. It was mine, not a copy, not an imitation, mine. The UI was stripped down but unmistakable. Even the debug flag, something I'd hard-coded for my testing environments, was still visible in the console. That smug bastard had scraped my repo. Probably during the one weekend I'd toggled it public by mistake to test on an external node. I hadn't realized it then. I do now. He took it, slapped a new name on it, and told the company it was their innovation. I didn't say a word. I walked back to my desk, opened a secure channel, and called the one person I trusted more than anyone else, my IP attorney. She picked up on the first ring. All I said was, "It's time." Because Rick didn't just try to erase me, he stepped straight into a minefield, and he was too arrogant to hear the ticking. 2 weeks after Rick strutted out his first innovation showcase, the office got quiet. Too quiet. That's how it always starts. A fake calm before the real backstab. Then came the email, mandatory alignment agreements. Packets were slipped onto desks like they were coupon books, with little HR smiley faces and post-its saying, "Just a quick update." Rick waltzed through the floor like Santa on Adderall, chirping, "Just some light legal alignment. No need to overthink. Just sign and slide it back." I slid mine into my tote, didn't say a word. Took it home, cracked a beer, and read it at the kitchen table with the same dread I once felt reading my divorce papers. Buried in paragraph 17, bolded only on the PDF metadata layer, was the real landmine. Any invention, design, or technology conceived or developed during employment, regardless of location or hours, shall be assigned to the company. They were trying to retroactively own my life's work. Not just Osprey, every doodle, napkin sketch, and sleepless 2 a.m. breakthrough that had kept me sane during the Rickification of our department. I didn't scream, didn't slam anything, just printed it, highlighted the clause like a bloodstain, and wrote one sentence in 12-point Times New Roman on a blank piece of paper. My original terms stand. Sent that and the unsigned packet to HR. No explanation. If they were smart, they'd understand. If they weren't, well, that was becoming the company's brand. Then Friday hit. Town hall day, Rick's personal stage time. He stood there in his graphic tee that said "Innovate or Die," grinning like he'd invented JavaScript, and began demoing what he called our new dynamic load system. Big words, flashy slide deck, too much eye contact with the C-suite. "Our engineers have been collaborating on this behind the scenes," he said. "It's a perfect example of legacy evolution." And there it was, on screen. My baby, not dressed up, not rewritten. Osprey with a new paint job and a slapped-on codename, Project Helix. I stared at the console window, saw my old debug flag in the corner. Spray test node 9. I'd left that in while running high-latency simulations on a remote server 6 weeks ago. It had never once touched company infrastructure. It had never been checked into any shared system. Only one way it got there. Someone scraped it when I opened the Sandbox repo for exactly 72 hours to pull a test on hotel Wi-Fi during a DevOps retreat. I didn't flinch, didn't make a scene, just opened Notepad and typed a date. Friday, 1:13 p.m. Then I started the log. Every lie Rick told, every phrase he used, every time he said, "we built" or "our team created" instead of "she did." I documented it like crime scene footage. Clean, dated, digital. I knew what came next. They'd package the tech into our upcoming acquisition pitch. Rick would sell it as his crown jewel. And when due diligence started, they'd pull the origin files. And when they did, the first name they'd see would be mine. Not just because I built it. Because 4 years ago, I formed a tiny LLC called HaliCore. And last Tuesday, after I saw Rick's first demo, I filed a provisional patent through that LLC, with every line of code attached. Timestamps, access logs, and a usage license that included one very specific clause. Clause 3.2, license revoked upon false attribution. I didn't need a war, I just needed them to lie in writing. Rick was doing that for me in real time. Tuesday's air tasted like dry-cleaned suits and desperation. Investor Day. Rick showed up 10 minutes early for once, all gelled hair and lanyard smug, bouncing on his toes like he was about to pitch Shark Tank. I watched him slap backs, shake hands, say things like pipeline agility and vertical scaling, like he didn't just Google those terms at 2 a.m. in a Reddit thread. He ushered them into the conference room like royalty. I followed, silent, clipboard in hand. Not because I had anything to prove, but because I knew what was coming. Rick fired up the projector, smiled like a kid about to fake his way through a science fair volcano, and said the phrase that would eventually sink him. "What you're about to see is a breakthrough from our new in-house initiative." He said it 3 times. In-house. Like if he repeated it enough, it'd become true. Then he loaded the demo. There it was again. My architecture, my adaptive load logic, same threading behavior, same balancing thresholds, same latency smoothing code I'd built after a week of insomnia and 2 pots of diner coffee. But the part that really made my throat lock, the performance metrics. I knew them. Every decimal, every dip in the graph. It was mine. Those were the exact sandbox numbers I generated during my stress test simulations in Osprey's earliest phase, down to the damn milliseconds. He hadn't even tried to mask them. Just scraped the data, plugged it in, and hoped no one would recognize the signature. I sat through the whole thing without blinking. Didn't interrupt, didn't twitch, didn't raise a hand when one of the investors asked, "And how recent is this work?" And Rick replied, "Last quarter. Born and built right here under my team's agile framework." The sheer gall of it could have boiled a lake. But I didn't boil, I documented. I logged the time, noted every claim, watched the CTO nod along while Rick explained my threading algorithm using phrases he barely understood. And when the lights came back on and the handshake started, I slipped out. Took the back stairwell. No small talk, no eye contact. By the time I got home, I'd already brewed a pot of coffee and pulled out the USB drive where I kept every version of Osprey, triple backed and checksum verified. I opened my call app, scrolled to one name, and hit dial. "Hallie," said my ape attorney, half yawning. "I need to move the provisional," I said. "Now." Silence on her end. Then, "You have a name?" I didn't answer. Just emailed her the log. The debug flag screenshot. The video of the investor pitch I'd quietly recorded from my seat. When I hung up, I sat in my garage, lights off, sipping coffee, watching the blinking cursor on my terminal like it was a countdown. He wasn't stealing my work. He was walking into a locked room, signing the guest book, and bragging he owned the place. And I was about to change the locks. The trick isn't proving you built it. The trick is proving you always built it, before the scavengers showed up with ego and sticky fingers. That's what I focused on the next 6 days. Not emotion, not rage, just math, memory, and metadata. I started with the oldest commits, the ones I'd pushed from my garage laptop after a marathon coding weekend 2 years ago. Each commit had a timestamp, each timestamp tied to a hashed signature. I cross-referenced them with email threads I'd sent myself, naming conventions only I used, old Slack DMs with a former mentee where I ranted about the early bugs in the node rebalancer logic. I even found an ancient Jira ticket I'd logged under my LLC's sandbox board, Osprey v0.4, testing failover behavior in unpredictable latency zones. Rick hadn't even been interviewed yet. I archived everything, made 3 copies, stored one in a fireproof safe I hadn't touched since my divorce. Then I hit the Git logs, not just mine, his. The company tracked IPs for every internal login. Rick's only ever showed access to the Helix repo after the sandbox test weekend, and even then, his commits were shallow. Comment tweaks, variable renaming, cosmetic garbage. No structural logic, no core architecture, nothing that could legally scream authorship. But Osprey? That had fingerprints. From the LLC's domain registration back in 2018 to the original design docs I'd written in Notepad++ and emailed to myself with the subject line, "Screw it, I'm building my own." It even had a Slack export from a freelance channel where I'd once asked a dev friend, "How do you license something so it doesn't get hijacked by your own damn employer?" She sent me the framework. I used it. That was 4 years ago. I'd forgotten how thorough I'd been. Thank God I was the kind of person who double-versioned her toaster firmware. Once the receipts were airtight, I opened the USPTO portal and filed the final lock, a formal provisional patent under HalleyCore LLC, with full documentation, visual diagrams, architecture charts, and internal behavioral mapping. The entire Osprey structure, thread handling, bandwidth logic, queue smoothing registered. And I wasn't done. I added a commercial usage license, hosted publicly. Clause 1.1, attribution required at all times. Clause 3.2, license is void if false attribution is claimed by any party internal or external to licensee. Clause 5.4, any derivative system based on the patented architecture must declare Osprey as a foundational framework. It wasn't just legal coverage, it was a landmine buried in velvet. Because if they kept going, if they built this into the pitch, plastered it across investor decks, tried to spin it as company-born innovation, the clause would detonate. And the fallout wouldn't hit me. Rick kept posting motivational quotes on Slack during all this. Success is 99% action. Ideas are worthless without execution. He had no idea he was quoting his own obituary. I didn't respond. I wasn't playing defense anymore. I was writing the terms of their collapse. The moment I heard the phrase strategic acquisition, my stomach didn't drop. It curled like a cat watching a bird walk right into its teeth. Words started leaking down from legal. A $200 million valuation. Tentative buyout on the table. Buyer unknown. Everyone got giddy, like teenagers on prom night. Stock options were suddenly gospel. People who hadn't spoken to me in months started asking how I felt about our future. I smiled, said I was aligned. Rick, meanwhile, was riding high. He stopped pretending to be humble, started using phrases like my vision, my system, and legacy busting in every meeting like he was running a TED Talk. The load balancer wasn't Osprey anymore. It was Project Helix, complete with a fake Latin tagline, a custom logo, and some tech bro mantra about reshaping the spine of scalable infrastructure. I swear if he'd had time, he would have printed t-shirts. Then came the vision alignment session, a 2-hour verbal diuretic where Rick monologued while marketing nodded and took notes like disciples at the Last Supper. He pulled up the same demo, same code, same numbers. But this time, he wasn't careful. This time, he said the words I'd been waiting for. Our team developed this architecture as an evolution of our legacy throughput logic. I wrote it down, word for word, dated it, time-stamped it, then added the phrase public investor-facing statement next to it in bold. Because now it wasn't just theft, it was liability. His words had become part of the investor pipeline, and when they eventually disclosed tech assets for due diligence, Osprey would be in the spotlight. So I went home, cracked open the National License Registry, and amended one line. Clause 3.2 already filed, already valid, but I added the timestamp. Revocation triggered on date of public false attribution, inserted meeting time. And just like that, the license they were unknowingly leaning on to justify a $200 million valuation turned to ash under their feet. They didn't know it yet, of course. They were still rehearsing slide decks and buying new blazers. Let them. Let Rick strut around, calling Helix the future. Let him slap it into every investor Q&A. Let him pitch it to the board like he personally soldered it together with dreams in JavaScript. Every move he made now was one step deeper into a legal grave. I didn't warn him. Didn't warn anyone. I just attended every meeting, took neat little notes, and said things like great progress and excited to support however I can. Because it's a beautiful thing, watching someone build a house on sand you already flooded. The CEO praised Rick's initiative during that week's all hands, called him a leader of vision, even floated the idea of a VP title. I clapped along. Didn't blink. Because while they were playing valuation games, I was finalizing a kill switch, one they triggered the moment Rick claimed authorship. Not when he scraped the repo, not when he renamed it, but when he told the world it was his. They thought silence meant surrender. It never does. Sometimes it's just the sound of the fuse waiting. 2 days before Rick's big vision delivery pitch to the buyers, I was elbows deep in my garden pulling out invasive vines when my phone buzzed. Unknown number, unknown domain, but the subject line froze me in place. IP confirmation request. Reference, Thali Systems, load engine schema. I wiped my hands on my jeans and opened it. A junior IP analyst from the acquiring firm, probably some poor, overworked associate combing through due diligence documents and finding something that didn't add up. The message was polite, clinical, but beneath it, I could smell the fire. Can you confirm authorship of engine schema registered under Thali Systems LLC? Appears foundational to Project Helix materials. Seeking clarification for legal review. It wasn't a trap. It was a whistle. Someone had followed the breadcrumb trail I left. License filings, public repo timestamps, architecture logs filed with the USPTO through my LLC. Maybe they were just being thorough. Maybe someone tipped them off. Didn't matter. They'd seen the real owner's name. They had to ask. I didn't wait. I replied with a zip folder titled Osprey Ownership Package V3. Inside, the certified mailing receipt I'd sent myself a week prior, hard copy of the license filed to my own LLC address, screenshots of commit logs and diff maps showing the evolution of the code structure, metadata from the sandbox repo with embedded access logs time-stamped months before Rick even had an employee badge, and finally, a PDF of the license agreement, specifically highlighting Clause 3.2 and the triggered revocation. At the bottom, I added one sentence. I retain all control unless explicitly transferred in writing. I didn't elaborate. I didn't sign anything. I didn't offer meetings. The package spoke for itself. It didn't just confirm authorship. It confirmed control. The kind that made investors slam brakes and lawyers start sweating. Less than 3 hours later, I got a read receipt from the analyst, then a second one from someone in the legal department whose name had partner in their title. That told me everything. Meanwhile, Rick was still basking in the artificial glow of stolen credit. His LinkedIn post went live that afternoon, all buzzwords and back padding. Proud to be bringing bleeding-edge architecture to scale. #innovation, #leadership, #scalability, #Helix. No mention of me. No mention of Osprey. Just a poorly filtered selfie in front of the main conference screen, arms crossed like a budget Tony Stark, standing on a foundation he didn't even know was already collapsing. I didn't comment, didn't like, didn't share. I just shut my laptop, poured myself a drink, and stepped onto the porch. For the first time in weeks, I slept with the windows open. The storm was no longer coming. It was already inside the building, dressed in a suit, holding my receipts. The conference room felt like a pressure cooker wrapped in a sales brochure. 12 chairs, 2 law firms, legal pads stacked like shields. Coffee sat untouched, half full, half cold. The air was too still, the kind of stillness that only shows up when something vital's about to bleed. Rick took his seat like he owned the building. Pinstripe suit, polished shoes, hair sprayed into place like he thought it could hold back truth. Across from him sat the buyer's team, calm, efficient, not smiling. Their general counsel opened a slim leather folder and clicked the remote. The lights dimmed slightly as the projector flickered to life. Slide 1. Thali Systems IP license, Osprey load engine architecture, bold, centered. At the bottom, registered under Halicor LLC. Clause 3.2 was highlighted in yellow like a bruise. Rick chuckled. You could hear the plastic in his throat. Could someone tell me what this is? No one answered. The general counsel adjusted his glasses. His tone didn't waver. We need clarification before this proceeds. Was this code, Project Helix, developed by your in-house engineering team or sourced from an external provider? Rick blinked, looked at the CEO, then at the CTO, then back to the lawyer. It's our system, he said, voice rising slightly. It's from our infrastructure roadmap, our DevOps. Who authored the core logic? The lawyer interrupted. Rick opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The CTO cleared his throat. Our logs show engineering contributions from multiple team members, but not the question, the lawyer snapped. The schema, the architecture, the adaptive engine logic and threading core. Where did it originate? Rick turned red, then pale, then that awful in-between where the face doesn't know what emotion to settle on. That's when all eyes turned to me. I didn't speak. I didn't shift in my seat or smirk or lean forward with a gotcha. I just met their eyes. Calm, unblinking. Watching the room crack. The CEO's lips parted like he wanted to say my name but wasn't sure if it'd taste like a confession. The lawyer didn't wait. Because if it originated outside the company and was never properly transferred or disclosed, this deal halts until the intellectual property trail is clean. Clause 3.2 triggers an automatic revocation due to false attribution, unless explicit permission is on file. He clicked to slide 2. Status: license revoked as of timestamp. The room went quiet. Rick started flipping through his folder like a raccoon trying to do math. There must be some misunderstanding, he mumbled. It was on our servers. We've been developing. No, I said. One word. Clear, calm, final. I didn't raise my voice, didn't look smug. I just tapped the binder in front of me and pushed it across the table. Inside, a printed copy of the license, the patent filing, and the email thread confirming receipt by the acquiring firm. The lawyer took it, read a line silently, then nodded. I believe that closes authorship. Rick stared at the table like it had betrayed him. The CEO sat back in his chair, fingers steepled. Why didn't anyone catch this sooner? No one answered. No one needed to. Because when you build an empire on borrowed bricks, you better hope the owner never walks in holding the deed. And today, I brought the deed. It didn't implode, it unraveled. Slow and surgical, like someone cutting the seams out of a tailored lie. The acquisition didn't fall apart immediately. No screaming, no overturned tables, just the quiet flick of a pen being set down instead of used. The buyer's lead counsel requested a formal hold, citing pending clarification of I-provenance. That was Tuesday. By Wednesday, our internal compliance team, 3 overworked analysts, and 1 exhausted legal liaison was neck deep in everything I'd handed over. Git logs, repo forensics, license timestamps, patent office receipts, Slack exports. They followed every breadcrumb back to the same place. Me. By Thursday, they weren't even pretending anymore. The CTO canceled a town hall. The CEO disappeared from the building. HR sent out an all-staff message titled Status Update on Project Helix, which said absolutely nothing for 4 paragraphs and then ended with a note that individual conversations may follow. And by Friday, Rick was gone. No announcement, no farewell lunch, no LinkedIn update, just a tight-faced HR rep wheeling a cardboard box out the side entrance while security hovered nearby. Word was he tried to argue, said the code was already integrated, the valuation baked in, that his name was on the roadmap. Legal didn't care. Clause 3.2 wasn't a suggestion. It was a kill switch. They flipped it. I didn't watch him leave, didn't need to. I was in the server room, replacing a busted RAID controller, humming to myself like I had before all this started. Later that afternoon, legal sent me a letter. Actual paper, embossed header, thick stock, signed in ink. First page, a formal apology from corporate counsel. Second page, a consulting retainer offer under Hallicor LLC. 6 figures, monthly, renewable quarterly, to support a tool I had built without them. On my own time. In my own garage, with no thanks, no fanfare, and no oversight. I didn't throw a party, didn't post a victory thread on Twitter. I went home, changed into sweatpants, and grilled a steak with too much garlic butter. Slept like gravity finally let go of my bones. Monday morning, I came back into the office. No longer an employee, now a contracted advisor. They gave me a temporary badge, same access level as Rick used to have. I stuck it on my old lanyard, clipped it next to the coffee-stained tag I'd worn for 24 years. The door buzzed open the same way. My desk was still where I'd left it. The only thing that had changed was the glass on the conference room, where someone had peeled off the words Project Helix from the etched vinyl decal. It now just read, Osprey Architecture, advisory support provided by Hallicor. I sat down, opened my terminal, sipped my coffee, same mug, new title. And for the first time in months, the silence in the office didn't feel like suspicion. It felt like recognition. 6 weeks later, the deal went through, quieter this time, with fewer smiles and no Rick in sight. The valuation dropped to $187 million. The buyers deducted the penalty for the IP breach plus projected restructuring costs now that their visionary had been escorted out like a malfunctioning printer. No one said the number out loud, but it hung in the air like smoke. Everyone knew why the figure dipped. Everyone knew who caused it, and who prevented it from collapsing entirely. Valley Systems, my little LLC, my late-night alter ego, my garage-born answer to 1,000 ignored meetings, retained full license authority over Osprey. Clause 6.7 was finalized in the closing paperwork. It gave me IP veto rights in perpetuity. If anyone wanted to pivot, sell, fork, or rename Osprey again, they'd need my written consent. No more theft by rebrand, no more erasure behind buzzwords. I didn't gloat. Didn't make speeches. I signed the new contract quietly and handed it to the buyer's counsel. They didn't even blink. They'd already moved on, just relieved the fire had been contained, even if the burn marks were permanent. At the closing dinner, they sat me next to the CTO and across from the lead investor. Everyone tried to act like it was just another deal, just another Tuesday. The wine was overpriced, the steak underseasoned. But when the toasts began, someone, I don't remember who, maybe an old architect from the buyer's team, raised a glass, looked at me, and said with a smirk, "Next time, maybe just ask the person who actually wrote the damn thing." A few chuckles. Even the CEO gave a small nod. I didn't smile, just raised my glass back, let the silence do what it does best. Later that night, I pulled into my garage, the motion light flickered on. Same shelf of dusty boxes, same rusting socket set, same stack of old company awards shoved into the corner. Employee excellence, system stability, long-term service, all the shiny tokens they'd handed me over the years instead of promotions or protection. I reached up, grabbed one, the heaviest from 2012, some nonsense about infrastructure brilliance, and stared at the plaque. Didn't feel like anything. Didn't feel like mine. I wiped the dust off, walked to the bench, and placed it in a cardboard box labeled donation. Then I shut the light, locked the garage, and went inside. They asked who owned it. I just showed them the receipt.